Welcome, everybody, to Defending Our Children. We're on with a friend and colleague of ours today, Kelley. Kim has a gut-wrenching story in one sense of a childhood and a youth that brought about a lot of trauma and abuse and tragedy. And on the other hand, you've got a young woman who is very squared away and poised and empowered because she's decided to be through it. So welcome to the show, Kelley, everyone. She helps manage our online presence. She's a powerhouse. She is a champion for children. We're grateful for her participation in this team and mission. Kim, welcome to the show. I say let's start, if you will, by sharing whatever you would have people know about you, and then kind of laying out the cult, if you will, the childhood that you experienced, and let's lay out the foundation for this story.
All right, let's do it. To make a very long story short, because we did a separate radio appearance episode about this whole story, and there's a lot more information coming soon. The short version of a very long story, I was born into and raised in a religious cult. This was an international cult. This operated in over 200 countries around the world, including all imaginable forms of abuse. Child trafficking was quite prevalent in this cult, and what we now define it as child trafficking. At the time, of course, we, the children, did not understand what was going on. There were all forms of grooming and all types of different abuse. Now, me and tens of thousands of children that I knew and grew up with experienced all of this. Unfortunately, we were never rescued. We are not part of any of the statistics, but I do know what I know because I have faced this evil, both from my experience and upbringing, and also now as I choose to be an advocate and to shine a light on this darkness, because I have seen it and I'm not afraid of it. And I also know how pathetic and weak it is. So part of my mission with V4CR is to expose this, but also to unpack it in a way that helps people understand what this is, what we're fighting and why, and most importantly, what they can do to be part of the solution. So I'm honored to be a part of this team with Veterans for Child Rescue. I help manage the online presence. My background professionally is in online marketing and branding. So I have a pretty in-depth knowledge of the various online platforms, social media, the algorithms, the audiences, and the general nuances of marketing, and especially promoting certain industries or products that may be considered controversial and that you may have to be a little unique about how you advertise. So it's strange, I think, that child trafficking is so heavily censored, specifically on these very popular platforms that we all use. So it begs the question as to why. Why would anyone do that? Why would anyone want to suppress the voice of people who are advocating for children and their rights? So let's unpack some very detailed and specific examples of that, but we can also talk about what's behind it and also what we can do to combat it.
I like that. Let's go there. But first, I want to give you props. I think it's so important that people not be afraid. The Bible mentions that we shouldn't fear 365 times. It must be pretty important if there's an occurrence for every day of the year. And I have seen people who were fearful, robbed of their life's dreams. They're afraid to even try to do the right thing and to pursue their ambitions. Oh, what if I fail? What if? And I see a lot of people turning away from the harm that the children are suffering. And I realize that leaves the children in a very bad place. And so we were speaking once back in Texas a few months ago, and you said it's important that people see this evil not as this overwhelming, powerful, insurmountable entity, but see it for all that it actually is, which is kind of pathetic, and just realize that's dysfunction, that's distortion, that leads to sickness and death, and just say no. And it was a beautiful thing to know, to just see in your face, you understood, like, I've seen evil and I understand it, and I'm not afraid, and I say no. And if we can bring the majority of the American populace to that simple understanding, it would be so empowering and things would change and countless little lives would be spared from harm. So I just want to lay the groundwork there because I think that's a really important place from which you come.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the sad thing is, and I tell this story often, this is one example of what could have been the impact of awareness and what one person could have done to make a massive difference. Now, I realize I'm not in this fight to fight for my freedom because I have been able to attain that. I'm not here to fight for my children, but I am here to be a voice for the voiceless because I do feel like I am able to face this evil in a way that not only is it not triggering or traumatizing for me, I enjoy bringing bad guys down. That is part of my passion. And again, knowing this evil and not only willing to face it, but I enjoy this fight because so many people think it's too big of an obstacle that we can't do anything to fight back. We hear all the excuses, and I'm here to remove all of them and hopefully be the example that if a petite young woman who faced this trauma and overcame it and is here living her life can face this without fear, I sure hope that no one else has an excuse that's holding them back from doing the same. So the short version of this part of the story is that in addition to being born and raised overseas and being in all kinds of third world countries while growing up, I was in Houston, Texas for about 4 years of my childhood from the ages of 10 to 14 years old. Now, Houston is one of the epicenters of human trafficking. It's one of the hotspots, maybe even the largest in the USA. During those 4 years, I worked in grocery stores and malls, in restaurants, on street corners, in all kinds of different facilities, including the George R. Brown Convention Center, the Astrodome, and many other famous locations. That being said, throughout that entire time, and mind you, I was an obvious child. I was not maybe almost 18. I was 10 to 14 years old. Not one adult had the courage or the awareness to approach me and ask me if I was okay or what was I doing here? Why am I collecting all this money? Where are my parents? Why am I not in school? Do I go to school? Where do I live? These simple questions could have literally made the difference. Even if it didn't, quote unquote, rescue me, it could have meant I spent less time on the streets, myself and other children. So please don't let your fear or maybe your fear of embarrassment or what have you hold you back from being part of the solution and from doing something to take action.
Important point. And very well said, and from real world experience. My wife, Tressa, doesn't like the term mind your own business because that's what happened to you. People minded their own business instead of looking out for the little ones. And there could have been so many people that intervened in your life and other children's lives that don't because they somehow have been conditioned to think they need to mind their own business. Well, I would say in the case of the children who cannot defend themselves, you see them in potential harm's way. I think each of us has the responsibility to intervene, to at least inquire, to ensure that there's no harm being done.
Absolutely. So what we're going to focus on and expose today is just one example of how intentionally this entire topic is censored and suppressed. And I say intentionally because that's a big part of the strategy. And again, we're here to help people discover it or to uncover this. That being said, none of us should be okay with this. So awareness is step one. Awareness is acknowledging this is real, this is happening. Step two is taking action. So again, we're here to provide the tools and the empowerment and the knowledge that can help people know how to take action. But we can also talk about some practical ways of what people can do to help.
Just opening up the discussion on censorship. And I don't know about you folks out there, but the notion that the majority of the populace are turning away, turning a blind eye to unthinkable harm that's happening to children, and that multiple massive organizations, news, social media platforms, actively censoring and suppressing the truth so that the populace cannot learn about the threat to the children and to cover up the harm of child trafficking is really, really upsetting to me. So Kim's got some great experience and stats and data to share with you all. Kim, I'm going to open up the door and let you go ahead and send it, as we would say in the sniper realm, when you got it. So go ahead and share with everybody what you'd have them know about the censorship you've been encountering.
Absolutely. Well, it's honestly happening from a multitude of levels, which is possibly the most disturbing. So if I were to simplify or shorten this conversation, in general, we are not seeing a lot of information regarding child trafficking in the media or online, in social media, on entertainment sites, etc. In fact, what's interesting to me is that it has been I feel, intentionally sensationalized, meaning a lot of theories or information has been added to the discussion that may confuse people and possibly even keep them from finding out more because it just sounds way too outlandish. At the same time, there's very limited data or actual statistics regarding recent instances of human trafficking and specifically child trafficking in the USA. If you look at the data, I also want people to realize something. I'm a marketing expert. I live and die by data. That being said, the statistics are generally based on what's reported. So the majority of this industry, of this criminal enterprise, is not reported. Therefore, the statistics out there are disgusting, but I believe they are the tip of the iceberg. And I say that both from experience and also knowing from the research I've done that the data out there is very limited. But when we're working with statistics, this is something I need people to understand. Human trafficking is the second largest criminal enterprise in the entire world. So to quantify this issue for people, this is not even a top 10 issue. This is literally the second largest in the entire world. But specific to the USA, because a lot of people will recognize that this is a far, far away problem in third world countries, but few will actually admit or maybe want to face the reality of the magnitude of this criminal enterprise in our own country. So in the USA alone, child trafficking is estimated to be a $50 billion per year industry. Now, if you've watched our documentary Contraland, you know this and much more. The unfortunate reality, $50 billion per year. That is bigger than all professional sports combined. And we see evidence of professional sports, both the events and the merchandise and the game and everything on TV. We do not see child trafficking. So it's much easier to ignore something that the mind doesn't want to see. It is a very dark subject.
Well, not to cut you off, I'll make this brief, but that 38 to $50 billion estimate was before we abandoned our border defenses and we witnessed a massive surge in children being exploited and brought into the United States and smuggled deep into other states from the border. So God only knows what those stats are now. 50 billion a year, maybe chump change now. And it makes me shudder to think where these children are going and what's happening to them. So please continue, Kim.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
And this is a rhetorical question, but I want people to think about, do we think that traffickers are reporting their dollars? When we think about these statistics, I want people to realize that it is the tip of the iceberg and it is somewhat of an estimation based on what's known. But the entire premise of this industry is covert or underground or secretive or protected. And we can talk more about that later. Getting back to the point of this entire topic being so heavily censored on social media, I have seen it become politicized in a way that makes people think it's a one-sided political talking point. I have seen it become sensationalized to the point that people think you are a conspiracy theorist for believing that this is real. I myself have been questioned. I have been even accused of all kinds of hilarious things because people are ignorant of what's happening because it is intentionally hidden from them. Now, if the facts are out there that this is the second largest criminal enterprise in the world, this is one more rhetorical question for people. Why does the USA not have a dedicated task force focused on combating human trafficking? We have task force for everything else that's important, including food and drugs and education. But why are not even our law enforcement trained for this or have the resources for it? It should leave one to wonder why. We're going to pose a lot of questions, and I do want people to do their own research, their sources, and to ask the questions that everybody should be asking, because let me say this in a different way. It's easy to ignore something that you don't see if it's not affecting you personally. But if all of us knew for sure that there were 100 children in a building within 100 miles of us who were being tortured, would any of us just fall asleep tonight and carry on with our lives, or would we drop everything and do something to help? Now, we don't know the real numbers, but the fact is that this is happening to lots and lots of children. If we are going to eliminate a lot of the things that people may question, because again, we can't really reference specific statistics. Question one, why is nothing being done? Question two, why is this being actively censored and suppressed? So I will give a few of many examples of the type of censorship and suppression we're seeing. But if you listen to nothing else, ask yourself why you're not seeing this in the headlines or on the news every night. It's not in the media. Why are celebrities not talking about this? Why are activists afraid to even talk about this for risking their own platform? Why would big platforms censor the voices of people speaking for children?
Right. Since when did child safety and child security become something that has to be hidden and banned and disallowed? That's a very
Absolutely.
creepy and unsettling development.
I'd like to elaborate on one of your points, Kim, and that is you have the Department of Homeland Security, you got the Department of Energy, you got the Department of the Interior. But the amount of dollars that you're talking about, we should have in a Department of Anti-Trafficking. And, we don't. There are subgroups within Homeland or the various agencies, but they're basically tossing a shot glass of water onto a building fire.
It's a collateral duty for some of these agencies. Oh, yeah. And we also do that. It's either the second or even the biggest criminal enterprise on earth. And yet it's only a collateral duty for which we are not very, talking about law enforcement, very well trained, or in some cases, not trained or supported at all to counter. Why the lack of curiosity? Why the lack of interest when the amount of harm is utterly staggering? A friend of mine told me that an agent in the FBI was emphatic and repeatedly told him, if we assigned every single agent within the Federal Bureau of Investigation just for prepubescent child sex crimes, we wouldn't even scratch the surface. So even if all the FBI was spent full time on prepubescent child sex crimes, we would not even scratch the surface of this problem. Folks, this is a global epidemic and enjoys a lot of top cover. It's creepy, it's unsettling because it's evil. And people need to start looking themselves in the mirror and ask what they stand for. Because right now, they're falling for evil. They're supporting the unspeakable for a dollar or for a title. It's not okay. We got to do something about it. Kim, I want to open the door and let you start to share with people some of the specifics of the words and hashtags that have been disabled so that people are not allowed and not able to use those to learn from, to network through, and to empower themselves to safeguard their children, and which platforms are doing that. It begs some very hard questions.
Absolutely. So I'm going to present this factual evidence, and I'm going to ask a series of questions as well to really get people thinking about the intentionality behind this. But I'm going to start with the facts. On platforms like Instagram and Facebook, otherwise known as Meta, I want you to search the hashtag child trafficking. Now, you may initially see thousands of results, but when you actually click on that hashtag and go to the hashtag page or the search result page for that hashtag, you will see page not found. This page does not exist. We have a list of about 15 or more hashtags related to child trafficking that are banned on Meta, Instagram, and Facebook. This means they are intentionally limiting the reach of that information. This means people who use that hashtag, their post may be flagged for using what they consider a banned hashtag. And it also means that someone behind there has to, or a group of people, are making the decision that this information is not something they want people to share, discuss, or learn more about. I'm going to read some even more disturbing hashtags because I want you to realize this is intentional. Hashtag child trafficking awareness. Hashtag child sex trafficking. Hashtag save children, save our children from pedophiles, save the children, stop child trafficking, stop abuse, end child trafficking. And here's the ones that I simply cannot. If none of those things were crippling your stomach like it did to me, I want you to look up the hashtag protect children. I'm going to now ask you a rhetorical question. Why would anyone censor that hashtag? What could possibly be harmful about that hashtag? Is it really free speech? And in what is their excuse for limiting the free speech around the conversation of hashtag protect children? The interesting thing, I'm being a little sarcastic here, but there are many other hashtags that one might think would be considered in this list of banned hashtag if they're really trying to keep people safe. But I'm going to parallel this list with the hashtags that are not banned, including hashtag child abuse. There are a lot of other things that I'd rather not mention because the results are so sickening on public social media profiles. These results include harmful, abusive child pornography content and pedophilia content that I will not mention them, but the point is that they are readily available on the same platform and they are not censored. So hashtag end child trafficking or hashtag child trafficking awareness and hashtag protect children, protect our children, protect the children. Someone explain to me why this platform would ban the use of those hashtags.
Well, and I'll tell you, as a former federal criminal investigator, I would love it if it were made to be answered for in court why hashtags like protect children, stop child abuse, and save children would be banned from public discussion while vulgar and perverse and abusive hashtags and pages are allowed. It begs a lot of hard and very deep soul-searching questions. I would love it if it had to be answered for in the court of law, but whenever these things are done arbitrarily on these platforms, they will delete your comment, they will ban a hashtag, and they know there's no oversight, there's no accountability. Nobody is being brought to answer for themselves before a committee for their despicable, in some cases, behavior, and it will not do. It will not do. It bears notice, folks, that with the Twitter files being uncovered, what we're seeing with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and its active illegal behavior and actions with Twitter to censor not harmful content, but patriotic content that empowers the people and it exposes corruption. I would say it's sickening the soul of our nation, the lack of accountability and the lack of justice, the lack of enforcement against the most harmful crimes, while the mothers are being abused and called domestic terrorists for speaking up with prudent questions at school board meetings and so forth. So some things are very, very wrong, folks, and they will not ever, ever, ever be corrected. It will stay like this indefinitely and only get worse forever and ever. Amen. Unless and until we stand up and find the moral courage to speak up and act in unison. And like Kim says, say, no, this is not going to stand. We're going to push back. In fact, we're going to freight train you on this. We're going to reverse this because the children are worthy and we refuse to live in an abusive, tyrannical state where our children are hunted and we're gagged and silenced. Forrest.
I think it would be very interesting if we got the opportunity to go to a congressional hearing, have these representatives in front of us asking these questions in real time, pull up a screen with the various searches and say, hey, here's what's happening right now today. Tell me why you're allowing this. And then do the antithesis of it, Kim, as ugly as it is, pull up some of those nasty other hashtags that we don't want to mention here, but pull them up in front of Congress. No different than what the mothers and fathers that are at the school boards reading books that their kids are checking out at the library, that they get their microphones shut off because it's too vulgar. The same thing. I challenge that any congressional leader to invite us to go head to head with anybody at Meta or any one of these platforms. We'll be happy to do it. We're not afraid.
Read the hashtags out loud and watch them squirm. Abusive and perverse hashtags that they are allowing while they ban and censor protect children. Accountability, shining the sunlight on it. Sunlight is the best antiseptic for corruption. That is what's needed here, and it is so very lacking. What do you think about what's going on with the Twitter files and Elon Musk taking over Twitter and revealing what censors thought would never get exposed?
I think it's incredible in a word, but what's more incredible to me is that he's the first and only one doing it at the moment.
That's an important point. Why are more not doing that? Why do so many lack the moral courage to do the right thing?
Exactly. What's incredible to me is that Elon was among the first to really expose this, and he's doing it in such a big way, and he found so much content in so short of a time. But what's more incredible to me is that no other platforms are following suit. I don't know if you've noticed, but the Twitter files information is not making headlines like one would think that it would, especially because it's proving so many of these theories that many of us were told were just theories. So what's your take, Salman?
This is a windfall. This is galactic in its significance, that those who are hostile to the American people, those who are on board this global Marxist agenda to break down and destroy all the strengths of the American culture, are now being surprised that their darkest secrets, that their utter hostility, that which they thought was protected, one of their tactics of hiding the truth and censoring and silencing the voices of our people, is being so widely exposed, and their agenda is being compromised. I love it. Hey, if the truth causes you to shudder and run, then you deserve to shudder and run. But if you act in good faith, if you act honorably, you're proud of your actions. And so the fact that they're so ashamed and frantic to censor them, any exposure of their own culture, reveals something about their culture and their agenda. And if you need censorship, your agenda is evil. And so I celebrate it. Evil and corruption cannot survive in the sunlight. Sunlight is the best antiseptic for corruption. I celebrate it. I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure what to think of Elon Musk on the whole, but I do celebrate what he's doing by sharing the Twitter files and exposing the utter hostility and the seemingly unthinkable level of censorship and the corruption of the FBI and their complicity in this scandal, this gross mismanagement of the FBI, and their participation in this hostility against the American people, the FBI's betrayal of the country that funds them, that literally writes their paychecks for them. It's disturbing to see, but it is empowering. We, the people, deserve to know when our federal government, when an agency stumbles and falls like this under gross mismanagement, as happened in the Air Marshal Service. The people need to know, because we need to stop writing the paychecks for that bureau or that agency until that headshed gets cleaned out and that agency gets reset back on its original charter for the American people. So I celebrate it. I think it's a game changer, but we cannot allow it to be brushed under the rug and silenced. We have to share it. We have to champion Elon Musk in this specific action, even if you don't maybe subscribe to him on other things. I think this is nothing but good. And we need to make sure this doesn't get hidden. We need to share and disseminate this information far and wide so that all can finally wake up and realize just how utterly hostile and intentional this level of censorship is of the truth.
Absolutely. I have a question for you. So to those who maybe haven't read the files or know what's in there, to those who may not have the time to go through all that information, how would you summarize the findings as it relates to child trafficking in not only a factual way, but a summarized way that people may be able to also share with others?
Well, what I think you're going to find, and I haven't read a lot of it, I've gotten reports from those who have early access to it. And I would encourage everyone to continue searching and researching and reading the intel as it continues to get disseminated publicly. But from those in the intel space and some of these legends in our national security realm, what my understanding is that it's some of their internal traffic and memos and standard operating procedures inside of Twitter, the corporation, and how they conduct their censorship, who they target with the algorithms, how it's done, and essentially an admission to all of it. I don't think in a court of law there could be any defense for the damning evidence that's revealed in it. Now, folks like us can measure, we can witness what they do when we post things that are empowering to the people and it gets deleted, or our accounts get deleted and that kind of thing. And we see the hostile accounts against the children, the child predators allowed to continue posting. You can kind of see very, very clearly what they're doing, but getting the verification in writing is a factual windfall as far as evidence, legal evidence. So I do hope and pray that heads roll legally. I think it needs to be gone through in a court of law, and all of these things need to be said and admitted and proven out. And the evidence needs to be disseminated far and wide on the court judgments and the convictions. And that needs to be a lessons learned for the American populace, even a compulsory study of a lesson of an agency, a federal agency that fell down and acted dishonorably and even criminally. And same thing with a social media app, and one of the biggest high-tech, apps out there anywhere. And just look how hostile it was able to be turned against its own people by hostile foreign interests. So I think all the evidence of the court of law needs to come out. That's really going to be the education for people that can't believe what you just tell them. And when they see it, when they read the transcripts, when they see the standard operating procedures, and they witness the evidence, the factual evidence that is vetted, I think that's going to be empowering. Boris.
I think if you also go back in history, the suppression that we've had to deal with, I mean, from day one, you've been shut down. Just a year ago, we were in Florida. You were on LinkedIn. You and I were traveling. First day we were there, you said, hey, they've shut my LinkedIn account. And the first excuse was they thought somebody was hacking into your account. Following week, there was a second excuse. Following week, there was a third excuse. So there's all these excuses they keep coming up with. And then they give you this ambiguous community violation, but they can't point out specifically what the community violation is. Contraland, for example, how many platforms did we try to get that up on? And for streaming services. And we went through with one of the streaming services. The first thing they said was, you don't own the rights to the movie. What do you mean? Yeah. We made it.
Yeah. utterly indefensible behavior in a court of law. And that's why I think it needs to go there to be exposed before all. So my question is to people in the CIA, whenever you first raised your hand and you swore to uphold and defend our Constitution against all enemies, foreign, domestic, and it was seemingly to defend the people. And how do you get to where one day you're utterly betraying everyone you ever loved or cared about for $1 or for a title for your job? At what point do you sell your soul and fall apart and not be able to look at yourself in the mirror and see anyone honorable, that you are censoring anyone that's trying to defend children online, that you could have any part of that? I wonder, I can't reconcile that. In my mind, maybe I'm just naive. Maybe I'm just, busted up veteran and father that's old school. And I believe that we should actually be honorable and look after those that we swore to protect. But that's just me. But I do wonder how people fall down that far and resort to such evil. What's been your experience on any sort of resolution with these hashtags that have been banned, Kim? Are you able to write Facebook and Instagram and say, hey, look, man, when you say that you're going to ban stop child harm or stop child abuse, I think that's counterproductive. What are they saying back? Are they having a discussion with you on it?
Absolutely not. There's somewhat of a nebulous, like, we've received your response. Thank you for contacting us. Sometimes you'll get a response like, we have reviewed this material and it's not in violation of our community standards. The irony, of course, is when they delete something of yours, they also use this nebulous community standards, but they have no context as to what you said that was in violation of them. So the other interesting thing is we talked about the various hashtags being censored or banned completely, non-existent, non-searchable on platforms like Instagram and Facebook. But there are a lot of hashtags that are not banned that would seem somewhat harmful. Now, I'm for freedom of speech, but that being said, if you're going to start banning hashtags, why does child pornography still exist on these big platforms? I have screen recordings of child pornography on Facebook and on Instagram, of pedophilia profiles on Facebook and on Instagram, of groomers and people messaging people inappropriate content, to say the least. Hashtags like hashtag child abuse material are not banned, but hashtag stop child abuse is banned. Someone tell me to my face the logic here. And I want them to explain the why, but I also would like the public to start noticing these things so that we can draw more attention to them. The other irony here is that it seems to be rather targeted to children. And what I mean by that is that hashtag human trafficking, hashtag end human trafficking, hashtag stop human trafficking hashtags are not censored, but hashtag child trafficking awareness are censored. Someone explain this to me.
I would like for somebody to explain to me, how is it that the employees of Facebook and Instagram and these platforms aren't revolting? Because it seems to me that just a handful would be very upset about the orders that they've been given, and they would be raising all sorts of flack over that.
That's a very interesting question and point. Is there such an utter lack of soul, such an utter lack of compassion, a complete void of love or care in Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, that none of their employees? Now, I've met some whistleblowers and I champion them. I think they're fantastic because it's needed, sadly. But is there no more than that who have even the tiniest morsel of moral courage? All of their families, their parents, so utterly morally lost and weak that nobody instilled in them the steel or the metal in which they can reach and rely upon to find some sort of backbone and stand up for that which is so morally reprehensible and even unthinkable. How do you get that many people to acquiesce and comply with something that's so hostile to the most precious and innocent? How does a culture like that pervade in these big tech corporations? I've been inside of all of them. I've gone on tour in all those big tech corporations, and man, they're proud of some of the things that they have, but what they're most proud of is how many people of a certain sexual perversion that they employ. One of them said, oh yeah, we're leading LGBTQRSTV or whatever the thing was. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I hear you. But if that's the first thing that you're proud of, what about the children? I don't know, man. I think there's some people very, very morally lost, and I'd like to see a return to sanity, to what's been proven, to what ends up being healthy and bringing up strong, healthy, well-grounded adults from a childhood with loving parents who are just bring secure people in this world. I think things have just gotten too crazy. People trying to reinvent the wheel morally, and they're just completely strung out. They don't even know what they stand for. They don't know what's good or bad or right or wrong, harmful or helpful.
Well, I wonder too, if you look at the younger generation, one of the things I hear out of my kids, their friends, they talk about not having kids. And this is a topic that I find very fascinating, and that maybe they just don't view kids. What's interesting is you'll have somebody jump on the bandwagon, and we, here at V4CR, we're all animal owners and animal lovers, and we love our animals, or their family members, but yet you'll see a champion for an abused animal 1,000 times faster than you would for a child abuse or a trafficking victim.
Well,
at
I
least
think
from that social media perspective.
Yeah. Well, the good news is there's room for positive change, and we're inclined to bring it. Talking about the censorship, and the good news is, folks, we can all be champions for children. We can all be the ones who shine the light on the darkness and make the positive change for the children that is not happening right now. Right now, we're going backwards. This scale of this crime is growing, and we need to reverse it. So we need to create a non-permissive environment, what we refer to as a non-permissive environment in the intelligence community and special operations community. That means you go to a nation, and if you get caught there, you're going to get strung up from a bridge. Well, we want for child predators not to be able to operate here in the United States, doing it to the degree that they are right now. Right now, due to the growing corruption, they operate with near impunity, trafficking children in the United States. And it's growing at an industrial scale. It's not okay. So why is it that on these social media platforms that the protection of children is banned? The topic of protecting children is increasingly banned, and the topic of preying upon children is allowed. That's not okay. We, the people, need to stand up and demand something be done about it. Kim's out there beating the bushes, fighting the good fight all day, every day. We appreciate what she's doing, and I'll let her talk a little bit more about that because she's so effective at it, and I appreciate her observations and what she's got to share.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to fight back in this way. It's somewhat of a form of retribution, not only for me personally, but for many people who are unable to face this evil. I want people to realize that darkness is simply the absence of light, and darkness' biggest fear is getting exposed. So the way that you eradicate darkness is by shining a light on it. Darkness cannot exist in the presence of light. So that's somewhat metaphorical, but it's very real about our role and our responsibility in this mission, this war on children, because choosing silence is compliance at this point with the magnitude that we're facing with what's happening in our world right in front of our eyes. It is up to we, the people, to take action, because unfortunately, those in positions of power choose not to. However, if we make enough noise and get their attention or make them so uncomfortable and expose them, the hopes would be that we can change the culture. So we have made our website a one-stop shop for everything you need to know about child trafficking, what it looks like, the tactics that predators use, and why it's even a thing in our culture today. So I would like people to visit the website vetsforchildrescue.org or v4cr.org. You'll learn more about our mission to protect children. We also have a press release article that we did called "Is Big Tech Censoring Child Trafficking?" You can find it on our homepage. And in that article, we lay out, first of all, what child sex trafficking is and why it's a thing within our culture. We also call out these platforms and the exact hashtags that are being censored. Realize that we are a nonprofit, government-registered entity, and these large platforms are focused for some reason on deplatforming us. We have been deplatformed, kicked off, banned from these platforms on multiple occasions. I will take the opportunity to call those platforms out. For example, we have been deleted from Instagram 5 times between Veterans for Child Rescue and Craig Sawyer, people who are championing for children and who are raising awareness about how to protect children, deleted without cause from their platform. 5 times from Instagram, twice from LinkedIn, twice from Twitter, once from GoFundMe, and once from You Caring. If that doesn't tell you that this suppression is intentional, I'm not sure what will. But what we can focus on are the solutions and what we can do to make change. So again, please read this article. We have a lot of information, and there are also 5 points of what we can do to end child trafficking. This includes raising awareness. This includes getting involved in your community. This includes referring us. If you know media, if you know elected officials or politicians, if you know influencers or celebrities who have the courage to speak up about child trafficking, please refer us. We would love to work with them. There are also multiple ways that you can support our mission, because once again, fighting evil is not cheap, and we appreciate your support, and there are many ways that you can support us. What I'm begging each and every person to do is to not ignore this message. Please don't listen and move on with your life and hope that someone else will fix this, because if it's not obvious yet, it is up to we the people to make a difference within this topic, because those within positions of power are simply not as effective as they should be. And I'm saying that so nicely. However, if we make enough noise, if we expose them, if we raise awareness, if the people are aware of what's really happening and what's being done to actively censor and suppress it, one would think that we could change the culture, we could make a difference, we could at least reduce this industrial scale harm that's happening to children all around the world and specifically within our country. So hopefully everyone agrees that it is not acceptable that this is happening, but it's even less acceptable that it is being intentionally and actively suppressed and censored. So there are a lot of ways that we can make a difference. What matters is that you pick one and do it today. What matters is that you don't let your excuses hold you back, because it is as simple as shining a light so bright on this darkness that it has no choice but to be eradicated. That's our mission, and we hope we can count on you to join us in protecting the children.
Outstanding, Kim. You know, so many people tell me, thanks for your service, your military service, Craig. The biggest regret in my life was that I never served. Folks, this is a chance to serve. This is more important than any of the operations I was a part of in the U.S. military. I can say that emphatically and mean it 100%. There's nothing more important than this fight, because those who are looking to demoralize and destabilize the United States for hostile takeover are deeply involved in this child trafficking, and they are gaining so much financial revenue from it, so much political leverage from it, as well as the sexual perversion and the deeper, darker spiritual aspect of it. This is their most vulnerable secret, and so much that is unraveling and going wrong in our beloved USA and globally. It's a symptom of this crime, of this industrial scale harm that's been happening to the children and all of the ramifications of it. This is at the rancid core of everything that's going wrong right now. So exposing this is an opportunity to do something very, very good with your life. And I'll just tell you, take baby steps and start doing something positive, and it feels so good. You'll find your momentum, and soon you'll be like me. You won't be able to turn away. It's just the right thing. The little ones are worthy, and we just appreciate everyone on our team, everyone that's praying over this Oregon mission. Forrest, go ahead, brother.
And you know, one other thing you can do is have a watch party. You can watch Contraland at www.contralandmovie.com for free. This is a Hollywood level production. Get your local Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, your church, your local community center. Invite people over, put it up on the screen, have a watch party, and take a picture of it, hashtag us. Kim will spread the love.
Yeah, that'll be cool. I'm going to speak at a church Friday night here in Tucson that's airing Contraland. Bless them for it. That's what needs to happen. Kim, we'll let you take us home.
Once again, we hope this information is helpful to people. We hope it's practical and actionable, and we hope you will take this seriously enough to take action. We hope the children are worthy enough for you to not only focus on this issue, but to find ways that you can bring about change, not only in your life, but in the domino effect that it can have on every child, not only in our country, but in the entire world. These steps are so practical, there's really no excuse not to take action.
Thank you, Kim and Forrest. Bless you folks out there for praying over this mission and supporting it. We hope you'll join us next time on Defending Our Children.